Hello, fight fans, and welcome to what is this, the sixth episode of Before the Baldman Speaks. I'm your host, as always, Andrew Lawrence. Really in still deep recovery from UFC 189 earlier this weekend. I'd like to thank everyone who checked out that show yesterday or checked it out early this morning. Fantastic feedback from everybody for the most part, and I really appreciate everyone taking the time to check out the show. A little loose, a little bit in the spirit of the evening as I was last night, so my apologies for that. This is Before the Baldman Speaks, the best web show, the best MMA post-fight web show on the web. I'm your host, as always, Andrew Lawrence. You can get at me at any time at The Clown Kid on Twitter. I always appreciate anyone who has anything really intelligent to say about MMA and any lively debates, as long as you can form a proper sentence. We have two fantastic guests this week or tonight on the show because I was just here yesterday. We have Brad Tushik from the MMA Analysis Podcast. Brad is a former guest of the show and a really funny dude. And we also have John King from MMA Junior, who should be joining the show any minute now. And we look forward to his insight into the card. Tough 21 finale. We just finished up the main event with Jake Ellenberger and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson with a showcase knockout victory in the first round. A good fight. Had a little bit of back and forth there with Jake Ellenberger landing a solid shot, dropping Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, not really dazing him, but dropping him to the ground, making him take a knee, stuttered him a little bit. Eventually, Jake Ellenberger's lack of left to right movement caught up with him, and some of that infamous spinning shit landed, and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson takes the KO victory. A really good statement win for him in a really big spot. I think that, at least for the hardcores, there was a pretty decent viewership as far as the typical characters that you see around the the Twitter sphere during these MMA events. It seemed like everyone was kind of watching because of last night's show. People were really buzzing and hoping that kind of the enthusiasm and the spectacular finishes from last night were actually going to stick. And just a really good night. Like I said, John King coming in any second. We had two tough finales that or two fights from the Tough 21 finale. I did not watch Tough 21, as I would say no one should. At this point, if you're still watching the Ultimate Fighter program, you should seek counseling and probably need to develop better friendships in your life. There's just people out there who will interact with you. There's people, reach out is all I'm saying. If you're watching the Ultimate Fighter on Fox Sports 1 in 2015, please take some time, reach out to some other people. Enjoy life. Take some time to enjoy the flowers here. We had Usman and Graves winning the tough battles, and Usman winning definitely the $300,000 for Glenn Robinson, a man who definitely needs another $300,000. Earlier on the card, Michelle Waterson took a submission victory over probably the most annoying person in the UFC, definitely the most annoying person in the 115-pound division, Angela Magana. And that's about it. We had a really lackluster card, a really good finish in the main event, but nothing much. I mean, I think that the carryover from 189 is just too much for really anyone to really to expect more than what we got out of tonight. You just can't live up to a great fight like that. But we'll continue this conversation more with our first guest of the night. You may know him from his radio show on MMA Junior Radio with another good friend of the podcast. We have right here on the line, joining us right now, John King. John, how you doing, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
No, appreciate you coming on there, brother. So I wanted to start kind of with the main event, probably the most eventful thing that happens throughout the entire card. Um, Ellenberger done in the UFC, or is it more of a case of Stephen Wonderboy Thompson's on the rise?
I'd agree with both. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson's definitely on the rise, but I also agree with the fact that the Ellenberger's done in the UFC. He hasn't looked the same as of late. Maybe it's age. I don't know what it is, but he hasn't looked great. He hasn't really been able to showcase his power or his wrestling or anything. And tonight he was beaten on the ground and he was beaten on the feet.
Yeah. Oh, sorry for cutting you off. I was just saying, I think that, really this is a case that Ellenberger's style and his lack of development in putting together the different phases of MMA really caught up with him. I know that he's training with Ronda Rousey's trainer, whose name escapes me momentarily, but, primarily boxing training, and that was clearly evident in his style. And the two kicks that finished him kind of were, reactions to this kind of back and forth movement he'd been developing as opposed to a left to right movement. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, a little old, but do you give him a shot to become a contender in the division?
I'd say top 10 most. When it comes to top 5, I don't think he's good enough to be maybe challenging fighters or beating fighters in the top 5, but definitely top 10. But I definitely don't think he's a title contender.
Play a little bit of matchmaker. Clearly a very big showcase win in that there was probably a good amount of eyeballs on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson right now. Do you put him against a big name? Do you give him the top 10 fight? Do you school him along, give him another striker? Because we clearly know that he still has problems with the wrestling, despite the takedown that he did land against Jake.
Right now, I'm thinking Stephen Thompson versus Gunnar Nelson. It looks like such a great fight on paper.
John Kavanaugh tweeted that off, and excuse me if I mispronounced his name, but tweeted that same fight off for the card in Glasgow. Who would you favor in that fight?
I'm not fully sure. I'd probably favour Stephen Thompson because I doubt Gunnar Nelson would be able to get him to the ground. But I think it's one of their fights where my prediction would change over time, and I'd go back and forth with who I'd pick.
That would be a tough one. In probably a case like that, I would use that as an opportunity to see if I could get value on an underdog, because either underdog in that situation could get it done. Elsewhere on the card, we had the Tough 21 fights. We had the finale, the $300,000 challenge, I guess you could call it, between Usman and Hassan. Usman taking a pretty dominant victory in that one. What do we see as a future for him? I mean, clearly he has a great wrestling game. He has submission finishes. Do you see this as a decent fighter beating up on some bad tough fighters, or do you see this guy as a potential wrestler who could put together some striking and become a fixture in the UFC?
Well, I haven't watched any episodes of The Ultimate Fighter 21. I've just been really disinterested.
Smart man. That is the smartest thing that you've said all day. That anyone who spent time watching The Ultimate Fighter 21, you've been forsaken by whatever gods you hold dear, because that was a terrible show, and those fights were terrible. You only have to watch the highlights to know it was terrible. So good on you, John.
As I was saying, I haven't watched any of it, but his performance was dominant, very good. But the question is, is his opponent of a good class? And I don't think he was. His wrestling weren't the greatest. He had just a striking game, and it was a good submission. He done well to pull it off from a hard position. He showed that he's a strong fighter. I can't see him being a top fighter in the UFC, but I can see him definitely being a fighter that maybe in the future a gatekeeper. If you beat him, you can get into the top 15 or top 10.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't even really see that high of a gate for him. Unfortunately, he's in a weight division and in a time in MMA where you really need an evolved, diverse game. And with the UFC kind of pushing away, to have a wrestling-centric game in the modern UFC and to get favorable matchups for yourself, you have to be someone who finds finishes off the ground, and he did it tonight. So as long as he can find finishes on the ground, he'll be successful. Once he meets that higher level of jiu-jitsu or that higher level of wrestling, that he isn't able to do that, that's when we'll start seeing his career stall. And
Yeah, and
that's what I think there.
it's
Let's talk
kind of
real
like
quick about
Damien Maia, isn't it?
Graves. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's kind of like Damien Maia. He was such a good fighter until he met the elite strikers in the division who he couldn't take down, and his career just stalled there.
Yeah, and then he had the unfortunate thought process to decide to become a striker, and you kind of see that sometimes with grapplers who get that flash KO and kind of fall in love with it. Who I actually was impressed with from the Tough 21 show was Michael Graves tonight. I thought that Michael Graves, while not putting on the most brilliant, finish or, actually, dominating, every single phase and every single moment of the fight, put on a really good performance of being able to change up between the grappling and the striking.
Yeah, definitely agree. His game on his top game seemed to be very solid. His opponent was struggling to push him off, and Vicente Luque just couldn't get him off it, and he was getting outclassed on the feet and on the ground. So it was a very good performance from him, and for his UFC debut, he didn't show any signs of nerves.
Yeah, definitely one of those cool, calm, and collective kind of cats. Going down deeper into the card, we get into kind of the foolery of of a Sunday night UFC Fox Sports 1 event, and we have Jorge Masvidal knocking out Cesar Mutante, and I think that might be 3 or 4 in a row now of just brutal first round knockouts from Mutante, and this one didn't even seem all that brutal. It seemed like a small shot that just put him right out.
Yeah, as I said prior to the fight, his chin isn't great, and before he actually started losing in the UFC, I thought he was going to be a very good fighter. He's obviously a protege of Vitor Belfort, and he seems to be a very complete fighter. He's got a good ground game and he's got good striking, but his chin is terrible, and you're not going to go far in the UFC if you've got a really bad chin. Putting it simply, he's got a bad chin, and he leaves it open far too much, and he allowed Masvidal to create space and didn't try and re-engage, didn't try and go forward, and he got caught in an elbow and got put out.
Yeah, absolutely. Just probably not a fighter that should fight in the UFC or fight in general anymore. He probably does have some name value winning tough in Brazil, so jungle fights will keep him around or something. But this is a case where really the people around a fighter need to stand up and help him out by telling him to take a break from it. I can only imagine, and I tweeted it out during the fights, how many undocumented KOs that Vitor Belfort put on Cesar Mutante in his life. I can only imagine that head kick that dropped Luke Rockhold probably dropped Cesar 8 times into full unconsciousness. He probably takes a dozen solid KOs every training camp he has with Vitor. No response on that. Okay. Yeah. I don't know where to go from there either. In the other clown show event of the night, we had Her Majesty get choked out by the Karate Hottie, Michelle Watterson. Michelle Watterson makes her debut and looks pretty impressive. What kind of a ceiling do you put on her?
I think to really judge how good of a fighter she really is, I need to see it a couple more times because I haven't seen any of her fights prior to a UFC career. But tonight she did look good. She surprised me at her wrestling actually, because obviously her nickname, the Karate Hottie, is kind of misleading. As soon as I seen that, I thought she's not going to be the greatest of wrestlers. And as soon as she ended up on her back, I thought this is where it could end up badly for her. And she got caught in that armbar, obviously. But she managed to fight out of it. She dominated on the feet, she dominated on the ground, and even caught Angela Magana in a couple of submissions. So overall, she didn't look too bad. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing her fight again.
Yeah, I think we kind of... The problem with Michelle Watterson, if you haven't seen her fight before, you wouldn't know this, is that she fights the weight class below. She was the Invicta champion, lost it in that division before her debut here. she looked really kind of small, and she looked a little bit able to be bullied by some of these girls. Now, Magana's not the best 155-pound woman. In fact, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone that Magana could easily beat in that division. So I think despite the marketability of Michelle Waterson, and she is very marketable, and she already has some really great sponsorships. I think she has a Samsung deal here in the States, or she's a part of a Samsung commercial. I think that this is a fighter that the UFC is going to have to be very, very careful about who they match up with her.
Yeah, definitely. I believe she's going to be a fighter that the UFC try and take care of. Prime example is Conor McGregor. So if they're really trying to, build her into a star, they're gonna have to build her up slowly. They can't just give her one fight and then put her in with a high-level opponent. They're gonna have to give her a few low-level opponents so she can showcase her skills and really get a big bandwagon behind her. But when it comes to the top of the division, obviously, as you said, she's fighting in a division up, so she's not going to be as strong. She's not going to be able to withstand the amount of shots that she could in the lower division. So I don't think she could challenge top 5, maybe top 10, depending on who she faces and what their style is.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people calling for her against Paige Van Zandt. I think that if the UFC does that, that'll be a clear showcase fight for Paige. She just has that gritty style that'll kind of break down the range that Waterson really needs to be successful. Overall, let's talk about the card as a whole, and then I'll let you go. Let's give it a letter grade, A to F. In this country, we give our school children A's when they're good and S when they're dumb like I was. So what do you give this card? Dumb like I was, or are you giving them the big A? Where does it fall?
I didn't watch the prelims, and I weren't fully paying attention to the whole main card. I did see the Magana fight, I seen the main event, and I seen a bit of the co-main event. So from what I seen, I was very impressed with the Magana fight and obviously the main event. So I'll give it a C, because I'm not sure about the rest of the card because I weren't really paying much attention to it.
I appreciate that, and you have a lot of wisdom for your young age. You gotta avoid some of these bad MMA cards. I tweeted out earlier today that the fights last night were can't miss MMA, and this was should have passed MMA. But I ultimately fell in the same category, maybe a C minus for this card. There was a lot of duds on the main card. A couple B fights sandwiched in there, but really just some really bad fights. The two shining points were the first fight and the last fight for me. I thought Willie Gates' early knockout of Montague was fantastic. You must have missed that. It was on Fight Pass. And then Stephen Thompson's KO in an exciting little back-and-forth one-rounder. A fantastic finish on a really lackluster night. So, John, anything else that you wanted to cover that we didn't get to?
No, not really.
All right, then, brother. I'll give you a little bit of time here to plug your website and anything going on with your podcast, and then we'll see you around the bend, man.
All right. So basically, I write for I'm the Corner of MMA Junior. So that's www.mmajunior.co, and we've got a podcast on there called MMA Junior Radio. And me and Nick Baldwin, the owner of the website, just talk about news, events, the event next week, the event last week, and everything like that. So we also have guest fighters on the show and that. So it's a fun watch, fun listen. So you should tune in.
All right, thanks a lot, John, and tell Nick I said what up. Nick, former guest of the show, always a big fan of him. Big fan of everything you guys do at MMA Junior. Like I've always said and told Nick, it must be one of the cleanest, most well put together websites on the web, not just for MMA, but for any sports coverage. And I really appreciate what you guys do, and hope to see you guys do big things in the future.
Thanks.
All right, thanks a lot for stopping by, John, and we'll see you again soon. John King from MMA Junior there, everybody. Our next guest will be Brad Tushik from the MMA Analyst Podcast and just overall Twitter notoriety. And I'll tell him to click in now. Some good insight from John there on the card. Mostly, with just some wise life tips, in that you should, not spend time in on a Sunday watching these preliminary fights when you couldn't be enjoying your life. I have yet to learn that simple fact, and I could probably become a much better, happier person and have much more fulfilling relationships with people in my life if I just, let go of some prelim fights. But anywho, we were here, we watched them. Overall, my bets on the night, if anyone is curious, I ran the gambit of betting underdogs again. This time, I dodged a few underdogs here, probably a few more than I should have, and I did not bet. Let's see here. We did not bet on Jared Sanders, who was a big underdog hit, and we could have got that, and we did not bet on Cesar Ferreira, which was a very intelligent move. In fact, never putting any kind of money on Cesar Ferreira is probably the only way to bet. Actually, the real way to bet him is just to put everything that you own on his opponent, knocking him out on the first round, and apparently that'll just pay you dividends forever, as long as the UFC will let him fight. Speaking of the underdog, Jared Sanders, really exposing Delone in the prelim fight earlier today. I think people fell in love with Delone just because he was kind of a person we knew and had a couple showings, I guess. Always kind of looked suspect. I really thought that he would blow by a guy like Gerard Sanders, but egg on my face and egg on everyone's face is Sanders just went the grapple route and took over there for a while. Really good underdog hit for those who we're trying to get Brad on the line as we speak. Josh Salmon returned with another fantastic knockout. If you're talking about knockouts of the night, he really had three fantastic displays. We had Willie Gates really early in the fight, put it on former Tachi Palace champ Montague, and we had Ellenberger's fantastic KO, but then the other one I would give it out is to Josh Salmon. But perhaps our next guest will have his own opinion on who out of the three should get that KO of the night. You might know him from being hilarious on the MMA Analysis podcast. You might know him from just being snarky on Twitter. It's Brad Tushik, everybody. Brad, how you doing, man?
I'm pretty good, and excuse me for following you around with my phone here, but
oh no, it's super creepy. It's like we're FaceTiming with you.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what's going on right now. I'm on my phone. I was out until there we go. I was looking for my headphones so I can actually talk to you normally. But yeah, I was just out watching my wife's friend's band play, and that went way longer than it was supposed to, but they had the fights on at the bar, so it was all right, and they were serving Black Label, which is always, a quality.
So it was a family establishment.
Oh, yeah. It was a real quality place. Lots of class there, I live up in, you're not familiar with North Bay, but it's a real classy place up in Canada. So, yeah, just a fun night all around.
A lot of suit jackets and champagne being drank.
There was one tuxedo T-shirt.
Almost as good as the lumberjack suit, the all denim and flannel jump.
Yeah,
just as classy.
It was a little warm up here. It was like 26 degrees, which is like boiling hot up here for.
Keep the flannel at home.
Exactly.
Sun's out, guns out, baby.
Yeah, nice farmer tans too, all around.
I appreciated the tour of your house. Actually, I was very impressed with the height of the ceilings. I have to admit.
I do have. It's very nice. I can flip the camera around and show you the nice windows that I've got.
This isn't cribs.
There's a little loft there too. It's a pretty nice place,
All the riches of a true MMA bettor.
That's right. Yeah, and tonight there were some riches to be had. I'll tell you that.
How'd you do, man? I almost lost a unit. That's it. I've been running, mediocre.
You know what? I've had up until Brandon Thatch decided that he was going to get his lights turned out by Gunnar Nelson. I was having a great weekend, and then it turned very, very terrible for just a couple minutes. Sorry, I'm just plugging in here so my battery doesn't die on you.
Okay.
But yeah, then it was going terrible, and I'm not sure if you saw on Twitter, but I had a 3-team parlay of Trevor Smith by decision, Michelle Watterson by submission, and Jorge Masvidal in round 1, which paid...
oh, no, that must have been stupid money. Those are all huge pluses.
It was about plus 4,000. So.
Oh no!
So
you sneaky bastard.
Yeah. Other than my bet on Jake Ellenberger losing, and I had a couple other bets that lost tonight, but I was playing with house money, so it ended up a good weekend.
When you play long term, like those big swing parlays, after a while you look at them and you're like, these never hit. They're so I'm such a degenerate. But it's that one time when they make your day and you're just like, damn, I just hit a plus 4,000.
Yeah.
There's no better feeling in the world.
Oh God, it's not going to happen again. And I bet 100% that I've lost on them long term, but it doesn't matter. It does not matter, because that one time where you can post it and be like, damn, hit that plus 4,000. What's up now, bitches?
And plus, you play it for $5, and then you chop off the amount wagered thing, and you got the screen capture. That's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I should have done, because if it lost, well, it wasn't a huge bet. I'm not a monster bettor out there or anything like that. But
you didn't drop 10 G's on the plus 4,000.
No, I didn't make 400,000 on the bets. I know. Next time.
How are you gonna pay the mortgage, man? Those high ceilings aren't gonna. Damn.
How was your night, though? I know you said you lost almost a unit. What happened?
Yeah, I was so busy this week and not really able to look at fights. So I just and not betting was not going to happen. So we decided to just I just took every underdog for a unit and just crossed out some of the underdogs that I couldn't bet on principle.
Yeah, Angela Magana.
No, I threw one on it. I threw one on that. I'll be honest. My thought process was this, and this is how evil I am in person. People think I'm a nice guy on Twitter, but sometimes the evil gets in me. I listened to the MMA Hour interview with Michelle Watterson.
Yep.
And I noticed her kid was kind of being like a little like bratty in the background, and when she responded to it, as parents sometimes are, she was just like very exasperated. If you're ever around a kid for a long period of time, especially in that age range, they just can get on your nerves and you just have like a bad reaction. My thought process was, kid in their terrible 2s, terrible 3s, distracts professional fighter mom so much that she can't train for the fight, and that she shows up and can't get it done.
You know what? It's not a bad thought process, because I thought in her last fight that she seriously had some of that mom quit in her. We've seen it in like Sarah McMahon. We've seen it in some of the other
mom
fighters.
Quit. You've labeled it the mom quit.
But we've seen it though.
You're the worst person than I am, Brad. You're such a...
I never claimed to be a good person. You said people either know me for being hilarious on the show or for snarky on Twitter. You know what? I'm beyond both of those. I'm a horrible human being.
The mom quit is a reality, and not that all moms are quitters. There's some badass moms,
Yep.
Kat Zingano, badass mom. There's been some badass mommery that's happened.
Lisa Ellis was the greatest example of the mom quit ever.
Oh my God, she doesn't belong fighting. She's just
I made
life
it up
quit.
for her.
Then that is legit. Maybe there was no mom quit in Watterson tonight though.
No.
Really, I was saying, right before you hopped on the episode, we had 3 good finishes tonight, in my opinion. 3 that warranted, or said something about that fighter and really like allowed them to say, hey, maybe this fighter's ready for the next step in their career. Willie Gates,
Yep.
Josh Salmon, and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Out of those 3, go for it.
I missed the Salmon one. I saw Willie Gates because I thought we were going to see Daryl Montague return to his Tachi Palace form. I thought he was going to put in a good performance. Obviously, that didn't happen. So
Tachi Palace is, sorry for cutting you off, but Tachi Palace is becoming the jungle fights of California. Winning the Tachi Palace championship in any of these lower weight classes is probably a guarantee that you're not going to cut it in the UFC.
Yeah, that's a pretty good statement to make. I still hold on to the days when the WEC and the UFC, they didn't have the 125-pound weight class. Well, I guess the WEC never had it, but when it didn't exist, so you had the best 125ers, they were in Tachi. So I still hold on to those days, and I think it sort of fucks with my my perception when I'm trying to break down those fights.
Yeah, I mean, I bet on Willie Gates and picked him in this fight. So
Good call.
Probably in the if I had actually focused on betting this card, I would have made a little bit more money on him. But c'est la vie. But Willie Gates is kind of impressed me a lot. He showed a lot with his eye poke loss. Any dude is willing to poke a dude in the eye. No, he pokes a dude in the eye. If it follows up on it anyway, that's a dude who's scrapping. That's a dude you want to bet.
Yep, absolutely. If you're not cheating, you're not trying, right?
That's the golden rule of MMA, Brad. There were so many times last night, in a night of great fights, but before the Tim Means fight last night, the card was a little bit full of stinkers.
Garbage. Yeah.
Yeah, just some real trash, some dumpster fire fights. And I was just begging for people to cheat. I don't get it. If you're losing an MMA fight, for sure, cheat. If you're winning an MMA fight, cheat. Shit, what? Yeah.
Yeah, when have we actually seen people punished for cheating in MMA?
We're only going to encourage you.
Even when we see guys punished, it's not even for intentionally cheating. It's for the accidental shit, like Eric Silva on Carlos Prater and Brock Lesnar on Frank Mir. I
love how you pulled the Carlos Prater Eric Silva. Is that the go-to one in your head? You're like, that was the one egregious moment of cheating that got actually wrong. That was sort of holy shit. You're like, they're really going to get him? They're going to penalize him? Nah, come on, everyone's allowed to cheat like 3 times. You got to penalize him after the 3rd. Don't you know how it goes? But nearly every instance, I was like, man, just grab that fence, put yourself up on your feet, do something crazy, eye poke this guy, whatever, It's MMA. The fact that we're not allowed to headbutt in 2015 in MMA still bothers me now.
It makes Mark Coleman's girls cry. It does.
Mark Coleman's the idea that there's Mark Coleman girls makes me cry.
That's very true. So you said there were 3 good stoppages. I didn't see the salmon one. I only saw the vine after of Caio Megale spitting blood in his face like a true classic warrior. But what was the actual stoppage there?
Hold on, let me check my notes so I don't say anything stupid. But I thought he kicked him in the head.
He's been known to.
Oh no, he subbed him. He landed a couple. I think he landed like a good 1-2. Kind of put him into stumble mode, grabbed the back, and then just big boyed him down to the ground. Got that rear naked choke.
Nice.
Yeah, just really good awareness from him, and I think he's a guy who the first time I saw a fight, I was like, yeah. Second time I saw a fight, I was like, that's okay. You won by head kick, but Eddie Gordon was kind of, Eddie Gordon. Yeah, he was Eddie Gordon. Wrestling Supreme, can't land a single punch. But then, he did head kick, knocking the fuck out. And then this fight now, we're starting to see what's developing here, and that's like kind of a really intelligent and aware fighter. And when the chaos is flowing in there, he really keeps his wits about him. And this game is really, really mental. At the level that all of the UFC athletes are, if you just have that a little bit of an edge in being able to keep your wits about you when shit gets hairy in the cage, you can become an upper echelon fighter. And I'm not saying that Josh is quite there yet, but he has the potential to be. He's still young.
Yeah. My big setback or big drawback to Josh Salmon has always been injury troubles. He seems like a guy that's very injury prone, or at least has been in the past. And if he can avoid that moving forward, obviously the guy's very, very physically and technically skilled. But it takes a little bit of luck too at the top level. So we'll see if he can hold it together.
Definitely. And, I wasn't aware of his injury troubles, and it would be interesting to take a look at.
I think he actually had I can't remember if it was a broken femur or if it was a broken tibia, but he had some serious injuries early in his career.
That's tough. But I have a weird theory, and this is weird theory territory, that injuries to a young fighter can sometimes be really good because they're not taking as much head trauma at like that in that 19, 20, 21 range, and they're really taking on the mental lessons and maturity of fighting, even though they might be injured so that they can't really fully train. If they're still real, if they're the kind of personality that can stay glued into the sport without actually being able to train at their fullest capacity, it can be so beneficial because they gain this edge of maturity. And I think life maturity also helps fighters. You can clearly see a 19-year-old fighter with great physical skills sometimes lose it to, a 23-year-old dude who's kind of figured it out just like a little bit more.
Yep.
So avoiding kind of that head trauma and those gym wars and all the sparring and machismo that happens around like the 19 to 21-year-old range could sometimes be the best blessing for a fighter.
So you mean that Clay Collard probably doesn't have a long history coming up in MMA or a long future coming up in MMA?
Cassius Clay Collard will be a UFC champion. It's stated. It's in the name.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't argue with the name.
Conor McGregor, the Irish Muhammad Ali, if he can do it, then, the
Irish Clay Collard.
Muhammad. Yeah.
Conor McGregor. He was Clay. Some royalties.
So what else do we want to talk about from this card?
But not much. We're talking about the interesting parts. We had two tough fights. Did you see them both?
I did. You know what?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Mike Graves had me excited. He hit a beautiful lateral drop right at the beginning of the fight, and I was like, "Oh man, this guy's gonna be good." And then
looked great.
Yeah, and then from there it kind of just yeah. Yeah, and Kamaru Usman, man, this guy's he's a monster. Extremely good wrestler. He's a better finisher than people gave him credit for, especially with what I was hearing on the show. And I think he showed a little bit of that tonight. I hadn't really seen much of his sub game. It was mostly taking guys down and just pounding them out before. But it was nice to see him work in the position.
At the risk of displaying my apathy towards this fight and this season of Tough in general, what weight class were those guys fighting at?
170.
This is my problem. A guy like Usman will not be able to utilize that kind of wrestling game against maybe 15 people in that division without question. 10 people in that division with maybe the problem is his game is going to get picked apart so quickly by people who strategize professionally for MMA fights.
I agree at the point he's at now, but this is a guy that was a very, very competitive international wrestler at 84 kilograms, which is 185 pounds. So I think that down at 170, he's going to have the tools to be, obviously he's not there now, but if he rounds out his game a little bit more, he's got a really long reach. He seems like he's starting to learn how to jab a little bit. If he can put some of the tools together, I think he could actually be a guy from Tough who does something. I'm not saying he's going to be a champion, but maybe he's a ranked fighter.
I think there's a misconception kind of about Tough champions because there was a big run kind of in like basically Tough 7 to Tough whatever. I don't even want to call it the numbers. But there was
talking about James Wilkes right now.
Or like Jonathan Brookin.
Yeah. Did you know he fought at 125 in Legacy like last year?
That's legendary. That's the best MMA story of the year. Forget Robbie
After
Lawler
retiring
gets
to India to be a Sherpa or some shit. And
I heard that he was the hot yoga teacher at TriStar.
He might be.
I think that's legit. That's like what he does as a career right now.
It could very well be. Yeah, that kind of seems like it's up his alley. Faraz
Zahabi like puts him in the fighters' dorms and lets him, teach a 7 o'clock yoga class. Makes money off of it, A lot of women want to do hot yoga at the gym George St. Pierre trains at.
Exactly. Rory might scare him away for a couple weeks after that fight, but they'll be back. They'll be back.
Rory's in Bikram Monday morning with a broken face, looking like a goddamn Picasso painting in the middle.
How good was that shit last night?
Oh, that was last night was so legendary. I started this episode of the show and I was like dejected just because I'm like the smart part of my brain knew that we weren't going to have anything nearly as good as that. Even if it wasn't the biggest card of the year, and there was just like 6 consecutive really great fights, that wouldn't have been able to be topped just because of the law of averages and how MMA cards work. But I started this show being like, okay, how am I going to avoid talking about the immortal, legendary fights that we watched last night in favor of, pretty much mediocre garbage.
Hey, at least Stephen Thompson did his best, right?
Stephen Thompson did his best, and Gates did his best, and Salmon did his best. I'm going to give those 3 fighters super props. I'll also throw a prop towards Trevor Smith for being a huge underdog and grinding the shit out of Dan Miller.
Yeah,
Dan Miller's career in the grave. Why not?
Honestly, that was one line that I'm an idiot for not betting it straight. I just bet Trevor Smith by decision because Dan Miller, for all his faults and for the fact that he's not even a real fighter anymore, he's a tough guy. So I figured he was going to survive, but I can't believe I just didn't unload on Trevor Smith just straight up. He was even money basically the whole time, and he's an actual middleweight. Dan Miller's a welterweight. Dan Miller doesn't fight anymore. There were so many things there that, man, that was it's one of those passes that you really regret.
Time out. Speaking of people who don't fight anymore, now I was drunk last night, but you gave me and Daniel a bunch of shit because we said Robbie Lawler cleans up GSP right now if they fight. And that's the truth because GSP is a fighter GSP is not a professional fighter right now. GSP is what's known as a retired fighter. What that means is he goes to personal appearances in the club and eats poutine and hangs out and works out 4 times a week and then does a NOS commercial for Canada and then
still beats Robbie Lawler.
And still takes him down and grinds him out for 3 rounds.
Exactly. Yeah. Come on, it's GSP. This is the guy who is probably the best wrestler in MMA history. He's going to take Robbie Lawler down, right?
Yeah, he probably does, right? If you give him a 6-month camp, yeah. But if they had to fight, just at the drop of a hat right now, I think we can beat up GSP,
If they had to do it
civilian
tomorrow,
GSP.
Yeah. Well, maybe not tomorrow.
Right.
I think Lawler GSP might just grab Lawler's lip and tear it off his face. Just finish the job that Rory started.
That was vicious. I retweeted the picture of that lip hanging out. It's like something out of a fucking cartoon, man.
And Robbie Lawler's just so awesome. He doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
There are a few guys
with that shit flopping in the wind. Oh my goodness gracious.
There are a few guys that can take that kind of shit, and then at the end of the round, he's just he's pumped up about the fact that Rory just kicked him in the head 17 times, landed a whole bunch of elbows.
The end of the 4th round was one of the scariest things that 2 people have ever done. Just standing at each other and yelling in the middle of it's whoa, this is a problem.
Yep.
Thank God we have big people in the cage to stop this from getting out of hand.
Yeah, it's a good thing Big John was in there instead of the ever shrinking Herb Dean.
Yeah, no one told Herb Dean that the steroid policy doesn't apply to the referees. Herb, you could keep using it, man. We'll send you some of the gummy bears they were giving A-Rod. We'll get you right back to where you were, brother.
Very true.
Okay, I write notes during this. Let's do a rundown. Let's see if there's anything we missed. I actually wrote notes for the pre-fights, so we'll see what we got here. Chow Magaleas in the blood spit. Pretty legendary in scumbag moves to do in an octagon. Does that make the cut?
Yeah, definitely. That's That's up there with like Babalu holding onto the choke for 37 seconds after David Heath was already passed out.
That was way worse. That was way worse. That was a number one on scumbag shit.
I said it's up there. I didn't say it surpasses it.
Okay, good. Yeah, nothing can touch that. Like, you know, that's all-time days in the number one spot. You know.
Yeah, that's you know.
That's the Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon of scumbag moves.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some other like bad shit, and whenever I think of scumbag shit like that, I always think of like Gerard Gordeau in like old school UFC, and even like the Pancrase days when he gouged out Yuki Naito's eye and made him a one-eyed fighter. But Hoist Gracie got him back pretty good.
Yeah,
made him tap like for 3 days before the ref realized what was going on.
I don't know what happened with MMA and that people, like, you know, talked about the sport as, you know, all being about honor and, like, respect for opponents. Because if you look back at the roots of this fight, it's like, Hoist Gracie is maybe the biggest scumbag in the ring of all time.
Yeah.
Held up to submissions forever.
Do you remember when Henzo stepped on that guy's neck after he choked him out? I think that was like Extreme Fighting or something. Yeah.
Everyone in the world loves Renzo Gracie. He told that story in the MMA Hour about beating up like 2 guys who tried to mug him, and like you hear that as a headline, you're like, Renzo Gracie beats up 2 muggers, and you're like, yeah, Renzo's the man. Then what you details, you're like, you may have just killed 2 homeless dudes. Like, there's 2 dead men in an alleyway right by the Oak One Club in fucking New York City, man. Someone should investigate.
Oh man, yeah, you need to get on the case. You need to get on that.
I'll get all over it,
right?
Yeah, I probably could. A couple subway stops. You know, 25 minutes. Hit the F. We'll be there. What else?
I see our buddy Dan Levy's tweeting at me. You know, talking about Lawler sprawl and stuff like that. Just, you know, Dan and I will have to do a show together one day so we can have our debate section, because I think that would be fun. That
would be fun. Yeah, I'll leave you guys to that. Mostly just because I think GSP's never going to fight in UFC again. I think he's one of those intelligent people. There's very, you know, when you have that rare intersection of good-looking guy who's intelligent who can also fight. He made $1 billion and then just said, "Oh wait, I'm way too smart for this dumb shit."
Yeah, that's also the key that you said at the end there, that he made a bunch of money. There's not a whole lot of guys in MMA that have made GSP kinds of money, right?
Yeah, right. There's probably 5.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Him, Chuck, Brock, I don't know.
You know, and you know what? Chuck and Brock might not have made as much.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't do it for as long when the sport was as big, so...
That's what it is. Biggest, you know, pay-per-view draw. Everyone knows what it is. Back to the card. I always mispronounce this dude's name. Ruslam. It's Russell Dome in my mind. But they want to pronounce it like Ruslam Dalone, which to me feels like we're adding syllables or
you know
something.
He's from Hawaii, not Russia, right?
I don't know. Like, with the way they're pronouncing it, I was like, oh, what's this dude, Brazilian? They're like, nah, he's Hawaiian. I'm like... Homeboy's Russell. That guy's name's Russell.
Yeah, it is. He's Russell. And they like say Doan or something like that. I'm like, no, it's Russell Doan.
Homeboy's Rusty to me. Good old Russ. Yeah. You
know? He looked rusty in there.
He looked like dog shit, to be honest with you. You know, poor guy got exposed real hard. How does a guy like that get steamed as much as he does? Is it just like people see a minus 300 and they love it and they're like, add it to the parlay?
Yeah, it's something like that. Like, MMA bettors are crazy. They like to look for, I don't know, the 2 easiest bets on the card and throw them together and just see what happens. And you know, you have to look at it. Like, I picked Russell Doan. Yeah, I didn't bet him. I'm not fucking insane. You know, I'm a terrible MMA bettor, but I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah, you look at him and you look at Gerard Sanders, who's a good wrestler. Yeah, he got, you know, his shit pushed in his first UFC fight, but that was against a guy who's a pretty solid striker at 155. This is down at 135. There's a difference between those 2 body types. So, and
just the power, you know, in the chins is just a whole new world. There's a reason why weight classes exist, exactly for that reason. So poor old Russ. bye-bye, never wins another fight in the UFC. What do you think?
No, he'll pick up another win or two. It's just, yeah, he's not going to turn into anything. There was a lot of hype behind that whole group of Hawaiians. Maybe at the start of last year, something around that, when Max Holloway started to go on his run, and that's pretty much done at this point, except for Holloway himself.
Yeah. Holloway's kind of keeping the Hawaii relevant, taking over the BJ Penn flame. We already talked about it really quickly. Willie Gates had a wild KO, and poor Montague is the Tachi Palace days are officially done. What is Tachi Palace? Is it a California casino?
Yeah, it's Lemoore, so it's in like the Central Valley of California.
Oh,
just like
cool.
The real shitty part of California that nobody wants to live in.
So the ideal environment for an MMA promotion that features lightweight.
Yeah, and Poppy's Martinez.
Can we get Prindle? Can we get Eric Prindle for the main event of the next Tachi Palace fight?
I think he's Eric Prindle's a Rage in the Cage guy. He's from Arizona.
Ah, damn! You can get some cross promotion going on in there.
I'm sure they could. That would,
Times are tough on the regional MMA scene. You need to see Prindle.
Access TV's starting to do it, right? So
if Prindle had to face the current Tachi Palace 125 and 135 pound champion, who do you favor in that fight?
What, at the same time, or?
Of course, at the same time. On a barge.
Man.
No rules.
Good old barge fights. John Snowden. Let's see. No rules, so nut shots are legal. So he's
full on nut shots.
He's gonna get clipped in the nuts real hard, and we know how Prindle does with that. Even if somebody throws a little kick to the gooch, then he's done for. So. Yeah, one of the little guys is going to occupy him on the front. The other one sneaks around to the behind. Just
classic DX style, like exactly. Right underneath the crotch there. It's done.
It's over for him.
That poor man has the most maimed testicles in all of MMA. That was literally like a thing they marketed a fight on. I think didn't Bellator show a highlight reel of him nut shots?
Didn't he win that tournament because of that no contest? They were like, well, it was a no contest, but he kicked you in the nuts, so you win the tournament.
That works in my mind. That's legit. Give him the prize.
And then they went out in the rematch, and then he axe kicked the guy intentionally in the nuts.
Oh my God! Yes. Now it's all. Once you said that, it all came flooding back to me. I was just, I was going through the motions. I was like, shit. He couldn't have kicked so many dudes in the dick and got kicked in the dick. I was like, oh yeah, the axe kick to the dick. That man, if you met Eric Prindle at a bar, you would hear the best stories ever.
for about 2 minutes, and then he would gas and turn purple and fall over.
Pass out, wake up again, repeat the same story, kick the dude next to you in the nuts, and then walk out of the bar.
Oh man, I miss the Bjorn Rebney Bellator days. I do. I really do.
Oh, we'll light a Santeria candle for him tonight.
Mexico.
George Sullivan fought Dom Waters, and no one should ever talk about that fight ever. Josh Salmon.
Unfortunately, I saw it.
I was serious about that.
Yeah.
No one should talk about it ever. Josh Salmon could be a big prospect. I think that's 3 big KO wins. We talked about that. Interesting stoppage. Maximo Blanco, who's kind of had a real up and down, and focus on the down part of that career in the UFC. Had an interesting little KO win against Mike De La Torre. What do you think, man? Early stoppage?
This is another one that I didn't see the thing happen live, so I saw all the reaction and everyone, giving Yves Levine shit for the stoppage, but I don't know.
Levine
I can't
sucks.
Really speak to it.
As usual, Yves Levine sucks. He's not a good judge, but that's fine.
Canadians are bad at stuff, I know.
It's just, it's not your thing to be like, if you're like, we need a dude who's going to be super confident and make a deciding decision on whether or not to, progress this guy's career for the next 6 months, or just put him down a spiral of income loss. A Canadian's going to crumple under that pressure, man. You just got to have some.
We're just like, hey,
giant ballsy America.
Money. We'll We'll let the government take care of him.
I think they both did a good job. Good job, both all around. You should split the money. Really, no one's a winner here.
What sort of accent was that?
I don't know. It got weird. I tried to go with like kind of like the people who live north of. Actually, I went with like a Minnesota. I went with my Fargo accent.
Yeah, I was gonna say you went with
That's
Minnesota, and Minnesota's kind of like a
kind of Canadian
kind
to
of
me.
sounds like a Newfie accent at the same
Sure.
time, and
I'll be honest
that's
with you.
pretty close to like an Irish accent. So
Minnesota
wasn't sure.
is the Canada of America. That's the truth of it.
That is very true. That I drove through Minnesota once, and I felt at home.
Good, but back to the stoppage. It was a little premature, but I'm not too concerned about it. Literally, Levine stopped him right before a follow-up blow was gonna just hit Mike square in the face, and it would just blasted him into tomorrow. Now maybe that punch doesn't land as flush as I think it does, and I'm speculating on my part, but I think that Yves Levine, even though it was a little bit premature, probably saved the guy from some serious brain damage and didn't change the result of how this fight was going to end anyhow.
You know what? I bet he did change the result of how the fight would end, because Maxi Blanco would have landed that punch, would have put Mike De La Torre unconscious, and then would have stomped him in the head 17 times and got disqualified anyways, because that's what Maxi Blanco does.
Yeah, you know, he's what was his fight that he got DQ'd on, or there was some
Corsani.
Oh my God!
And a bunch of them in Japan.
I feel like Corsani just was brutalized throughout his entire MMA career, either legally or illegally. Every single fight ended with him dead.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. He retired recently, didn't he?
I hope so. I hope he has people in his life who love him.
I used to have a running rule that I would bet whoever was fighting Akira Corsani in round 2, and if I could have bet it specifically round 2 by TKO, I would have done that too, because that's always what seemed to happen in these fights.
Or he wins the DQ by, what was it? It was like a blatant knee to the head.
Oh yeah, and he shattered his face in 17 pieces. It was something special.
That's a good sign to end the MMA career. You're like, oh, I shattered my face. My face got shattered. Think this is working out for me, guys? No?
Maxi Blanco, he's one of those guys that you have to watch, though. Just, you don't know what's going to happen in his fights.
You never know when he's going to shatter a dude's face illegally, which,
exactly.
And MMA gives you literally an 80% chance of winning the fight outright as a knockout.
Yeah, we were just talking about cheating to win, so Maxi
the master
Blanco,
of the game.
He's the one guy who's maybe taking it a little bit too far, maybe not
far
I don't
enough.
care. It's fun to
Probably
watch.
not far enough.
Exactly. He needs to be more blatant about his cheating, and then he would get away with it.
He's really just changing the current, right now we have this level of tolerance for cheating. He's just trying to push the whole league to a higher level of cheating tolerance.
Yeah.
5 blatant cheats before you get a warning. Why not? We could be there.
That sounds about right. And one other thing, 2 guys that missed weight this weekend. This is something I noticed a little bit earlier in the year.
Miss weight. Fights.
Don't bother with the second cut trying to drain yourself anymore. Just come out there.
Move in the MMA.
Yep, and do it, and it works. It worked for John Lineker. It worked for Stevens last night. It worked for Blanco tonight. It's worked a shitload of times on the regional circuit. So again, cheat to win.
Pay your fine. Hit up the buffet at the Mandalay Bay. I would highly suggest their unlimited champagne brunch in the morning, and that's just going to put you in a winner's mind frame right there.
Exactly. Yep.
What's it going to cost you? You're hopefully making more money in discretionary bonuses than you are on the on-paper money. So, pay that 6 G's. Don't cut that last 3 pounds of water weight. That's a bitch in the sauna. Chill. If you're going to miss weight and you're going to miss weight by a pound, you should be missing weight by 3 pounds. Don't starve yourself before you're going to get on the scale. Eat something. Yep. Have a little bit of watermelon. A coconut water in you. Then you're feeling great. You're super hydrated, and you're going to knock some dude the fuck out. That's going to be called the Jeremy Stevens now.
Absolutely. Well,
it's actually called John Lineker.
Yeah, exactly. But
it's like correction. That is the John Lineker. That is what his career is based on, guys.
would you consider yourself a mathematician, Andrew?
Yeah. I hold many honorary degrees.
All right, so let's say this. Let's say, just to make the numbers easy, a guy makes 10 and 10.
I got my pen. I'll write this down. Okay, 10 and 10. Yeah.
What do you think is more? His win bonus for winning the fight, so the extra $10,000, or the $2,000 he's going to lose for missing weight?
Okay.
This
is early estimates. We haven't got the official statistics in from Fight Metrics, but it seems like he has the potential to make an additional $8,000.
Yeah. Let's do that one.
That just seems to make sense. And you ain't getting fined that Reebok money, so you might as well. That check's good. You're basically just giving him your Reebok check.
Yeah. Just be like, you know what, Reebok? Fuck you. I'm not even going to wear your trunks in the cage.
Boom. Did you notice that the two dudes from Tough really didn't have Reebok gear on?
I did see that. Yeah, that was, I don't know why.
They're like, listen, we have customized jerseys for every single fighter, except for these two fucking losers who both going to get caught immediately.
Except the crazy thing is, those two losers had way more exposure than most of the assholes on that card, because they were on a show that, nobody watched it, but nobody watched it. The nobody that watched that was more than the nobody that's watched the other guys fight before.
I think that the clear winner in exposure tonight was Willie Gates, fighting on that Fight Pass of a Sunday card after the biggest fight of the year. He might have fought to a dozen people inside of Mandalay Bay. Or maybe it was the MGM tonight.
This is where the UFC needs to correct their problem with the Fight Pass streams. Every time the card changes, you have to click over to the next stream. Like when it goes from the Fight Pass prelims to the actual prelims to the main card, you have to watch a different stream. If they kept it all in the same stream, maybe there's some drunk assholes who fell asleep last night, left their Fight Pass on, they wake up this afternoon, they see Willie Gates knock out Daryl Montague, new star, boom.
New Willie Gates fan right there.
Exactly.
I'll be honest with you, I kind of am a Willie Gates fan. He looks a little bit like a very young Lil Wayne, Yeah,
I can see that.
Real dread.
Although, who do you think's smaller, Lil Wayne or Willie Gates?
I'm gonna go Lil Wayne. For some reason, I think Lil Wayne he looks like one of those dudes who drinks so much promethazine and codeine that his body's rejecting all muscle and all fat from actually growing on him. He's just become skeleton and skin at this point. So he might have an inch or two on Willie Gates, but if Lil Wayne weighs 105 pounds, I'll be shocked.
Well, I don't even think he's got an inch or two on it because he walks out with Floyd all the time, and Floyd's 145 pounds or 140
when Floyd
pounds
towers over
range. You. Exactly, right? And Justin Bieber, I bet Justin Bieber can even whoop Lil Wayne's ass.
You're giving the Biebs way too much credit.
Hey, Canadian boy.
The Canadian bias is showing up, all right?
Maybe he played hockey once or twice in his life.
Maybe, yeah. Can you imagine the poor asshole in Floyd's crew who has to, train Justin Bieber in boxing? That's a job, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, my boy Bieber's coming by. He's going to put in 6 rounds in the pads. And some dude in the back is like, fucking shit, that's dumbass kids.
Until Bieber throws down 5 G's as a tip for the training, and then he's like, oh yeah, that's my homeboy Biebs. I've told him.
It's like you instantly hate him until you remember that he just throws 5 G's at you like a used Kleenex. I can't imagine that, Justin Bieber just lands crisp combos, lots of pop on the mitts, just hearing great audio.
Yeah, I don't think there's I don't think you're hearing those punches across the gym and thinking there's gunshots going off or anything like that.
Now, you have to think that Justin Bieber, and what the fuck, we're talking about Justin Bieber, but you have to think that Justin Bieber really wants to be a tough guy and would take a boxing fight for probably a pretty low amount of money. What kind of a purse do you think Justin Bieber would take to take a, not even a pro fight, one of these amateur fights, a Golden Gloves, round 1 level fight? But it would be a big televised event.
It's amateur, so he's not getting paid.
Oh, he couldn't get paid. Yeah,
But,
they'd have to make it like semi-pro against an 0-0 dude who has like.
Hey, Justin Bieber against Mickey Rourke. How about that?
Who do you give the edge to?
You saw Mickey Rourke's vicious body attack in his boxing fight. Mickey Rourke is taking Justin Bieber out.
Oh my God! Probably the most devastating body shots that we've ever seen.
Yeah, Conor McGregor needs to take lessons from Mickey Rourke. I think they've got that Irish blood in them. I think Conor is learning a little bit from Mickey.
Mickey Rourke has every type of blood in him. He is a vampire. The only reason he is alive is because he's been eating the flesh of lots of children from across the globe.
Yes, that seems like an accurate statement.
I give Justin Bieber the slight nod against Mickey Rourke. I think that Bieber finds the homeless dude who Rourke dropped. Learns the intricacies of how to avoid the body shot. Learns the wink and the nod.
How to avoid throwing a fight.
Learns the wink and the nod game, and the Bieber money comes through, and Mickey takes the fade on it.
Yeah, at this point, who knows what Mickey's lifestyle is like, so he could probably use a couple extra bucks to throw a fight of his own, right?
Sure. Country that holds this fight, Canada's the front runner, but they might have too much class for this shit show. I'm thinking like Uzbekistan somewhere in like
it has to be an old Soviet satellite state.
Albania, Slovakia, something like that.
Yeah. You got your head in the right place right now.
Montenegro's a possibility. I bet there's some casinos jumping at it right now. All right, back to this card before we get this going forever. Anything else you want to talk about? I think we might have covered the gambit here, man.
Yeah, I was hopeful about Jake Ellenberger. I had a little bet on him. He landed that one shot. I was like, oh shit, he's actually gonna do it. And then
look good.
Yeah, and the scary part about that fight is that like physically when they clinched up, Stephen Thompson was pushing him around. So Jake Ellenberger is. I wasn't 100% sold on the fact that he was shot. He's shot at this point, and I'll see a lot of people saying Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is a future contender or something like that. I don't see that at all.
Stop that MMA. Stop that.
Yeah, exactly. But
it's just rude.
Some fun fights.
You're just being rude to Stephen Boyd Thompson right now. Like, why let him, why are we lying to the poor guy? Like, you don't wrestle. You can't really wrestle. You kind of took down Jake Ellenberger, and even with that technique, people just didn't believe it. You're going to be one of my favorite fighters because you throw, spinning shit, and that's always a big plus for me. But I don't see you going, far anywhere. I'd love to see myself be wrong there because we would see spitting shit KOs all the way up the ladder, but that just doesn't work against everyone. I think Jake's shot. I think training with, and I can't remember Rousey's trainer still.
Edmund Tarverdian.
The Armenian dude Edmund.
Yeah, that guy is awful.
Oh, strong opinions. I really don't think that him teaching boxing to Jake is translated very poorly. Jake doesn't move left to right; he moves forward and backwards. And don't parent this fight and for a guy like Wonderboy Thompson, he's gonna pick up on that easy. This is what he does. Striking's his wheelhouse. You're gonna use shitty boxing against someone who is a kickboxer. That's just a bad look. I always look at the I could say like Muay Thai versus boxer, but it's really anyone who uses like a punching and kicking, style of martial art against a straight boxer. The kicking art's always going to have an advantage because of the extra length of legs, and that's that.
Yep.
And then you add into the fact that Jake's, boxing is really just subpar. If you're talking about boxing in a straight boxing sense, that is not really good technical boxing. Some very mediocre, lower level boxers will have better, crisper technique. I can go to the boxing gyms in New York that I go to, and goof around with my buddies and see people just, sparring with better straight boxing technique than Jake. Yeah. Tough guy, had a little bit of shine, probably had that nice smiling face and some like real good down-home American genes, so they thought, this could be a guy we could sell. And unfortunately, that's just never going to be the case for Jake Ellenberger.
Nope. Had some pop, landed some good punches on some guys, but eventually...
Still has the pop, apparently.
Yeah, that's very true. Just not enough. Not enough. So, yeah, that's about the only thing that was really relevant on this card.
Yeah. Toodaloo. This we follow up the greatest UFC card in maybe the history of modern UFC for Jake Ellenberger's swan song.
Hey, but at least we only have to wait like 3 more days for another one, right?
Absolutely. Okay, we'll talk about this briefly, and then we'll go and we'll close the show out. Todd Duffy against Frank Mir. Who do you like in this shit show?
Man, this one's tough to call because
no, it's not.
It shouldn't be tough to call, but it is because it's Todd Duffy. Like, Todd Duffy should go out there and just like pick Frank Mir up and snap him in half, but
yeah.
It's Todd Duffy. Like, he might run forward and run into one punch from a little baby left hook from Mike Russo and get his shit knocked out. So
a man who's been knocked out by Mike Russo,
Yeah.
That's the danger of Todd Duffy. Do they use this phrase in Canada when you're playing golf and like you hit too much of the grass and you don't get a piece of your ball really, you duff?
Yep.
Yeah. Todd Duffy is the most apt named dude in the world. He was fated by his very genes in his family to be a dude who was gonna duff on occasion.
Poor guy.
I don't think he duffs. I don't think he pulls the Rousseau. Frank Mir just seems to me to be a guy whose physicality's kind of breaking down there.
Hey, it was great betting him at like plus 400 by TKO against Bigfoot, though.
I got a piece of that straight up. I think I got a piece of that straight up, or I could just be wishfully thinking I got a piece of that straight up. But that was just because everyone knew that the TRT had failed poor Bigfoot. Once they stopped giving him the injections, it was, he couldn't take a shot. Frank Mir, I imagine, gets knocked out. Duffy looked really good or just like physically didn't look like a cripple out there, and that's what I think of when I see Frank Mir move. Just looks like every bone in his back has been broken at least 3 times. Yeah.
Well, we know every bone in his leg's been broken, so.
You know what? Sometimes fate deals you a cruel revenge scheme. You want to break people's arms, Frank Mir. You're going to pay for it along the way.
But
although he probably was broken before. Yeah, a lot of bad shit happened to him before he even broke poor Nogueira's arm.
Yeah.
All right, so Wednesday, you'll be there degenerating up, betting on these fights?
Yep. Don't have anything on there right now. I'd have to take a look at the card, but I know there's a couple bets that I've been eyeing on that card, and the lines for the Scotland cards, some of those just came out tonight, and the rest should be out either later tonight or early tomorrow morning. And there's a couple things that I like there as well. So, the train never stops when you're degenerates like us.
Yep. I got half a year. I'm basically at break even. I'm thinking everything will go positive because, that's the viewpoint you got to have when you're sticking your neck out all the time. Why don't you plug a few things here, Brad, and let's wrap it up for the people.
MMAoddsbreaker.com. That's where you can see my breakdowns on the opening lines. I do a couple sort of hype articles for fights and things like that before the cards come up. And, of course, where the majority of people know me from now, the MMA Analysis Podcast, in my opinion, the most entertaining MMA podcast going right now. So I'm not sure if you consider this a podcast. I consider it more of like a live show where we're just...
Until I make it an audio show, which may be coming. I was looking at it. This isn't a podcast yet.
Okay, so yeah, MMA Analysis, most entertaining MMA podcast out there. Go check that out.
Yeah, definitely a podcast worth your time. It comes out a little bit later on in the week, so a good laugh after hearing about all the fights for a week. It's good to kind of just have a show that's a little bit more free flowing and just funny, as opposed to so much analysis. Brad, thank you for coming on the show. Again, always great having you on, man. And, take it easy and congratulations. Hope you made some money tonight.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
All right, that was Brad Tushik from MMAOddsBreaker.com and the MMA Analysis Podcast, which actually is a very funny podcast. He wouldn't lie to you. I'm going to wrap it up. That's all from me. Thank you once again to everyone who shared, liked, wrote comments, or did anything for the video last night. It looked like the numbers were tracking pretty well, and we had a lot of new people looking at the show. So I really love to see that. Thank you to anyone who watches it live. My live viewers are always my favorite, and thank you very much for supporting the show. If anyone watching now, if you're a big fan, please share us on social media. Share us on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, what have you. We really appreciate it. In the next couple months, I'm going to make some big changes to the show, make a couple more segments, and like I alluded to towards Brad, we'll be looking to turn this web show into an audio podcast. So looking at my beautiful face will become optional. Tough 21 finale, subpar night of fights, but I don't know what we could expect after such a legendary card the night before. I'd like to thank my guest Daniel Levy for stopping by last night. It was a wild night, I think, for everyone. So a little bumpy terrain during that show, and I appreciate him coming on. Shout out to John King and MMA Jr. for coming on as our first guest, and Brad, like I said, very funny, very cool dude. And I believe you could just check him out at Brad Tushik, TAS, on Twitter. This is Before the Baldman Speaks, Episode 6. Thank you so much for tuning in, and you have a fantastic night. Peace.